guys, Miss G here. So today we're going to be working on our nativity, trying to figure out the strategies and the tips and tricks that are going to help our project go really well. So what I did first was I looked online to see what kind of nativity sets might look really lovely made of clay. And here's the first one I came upon. It's quite beautiful, especially the fact that the cloaks have designs on them. So that was the first idea I started with. But they look quite tall, and that means that they could be fragile. So I kept looking. And then I came upon this. This looks a little more simple, a little more kid-friendly maybe, and certainly less fragile. So I thought that this might be our project. It is very simple, called minimalistic, I would say, since there aren't eyes and noses and mouths, but all of the design, the beauty of it, is in the detail on the cloaks. We are going to be using items to make detail and patterns on the cloaks. And so I'll show you what I did and what it looked like, and see if you can come up with your own ideas too.
For this video, I'm going to be showing you how to do decorative techniques using impressions. Impressions are using any random objects, fabric, or even handmade stamps that you use with regular clay and then bisque fire them. So the first thing I'm going to show you is over plastic clay. This doesn't work as well with leather hard clay or a little bit stiffer clay. It has to be plastic. But just to take a fabric and lay it on top of your plastic clay and simply just use your rolling pin to roll over your clay with the fabric. Now I'm going to pull up just a corner. Okay, that looks okay, but I want it just to be a little bit deeper. So I'm just going to roll again, just pushing a little bit harder. Double check. Like that, so I'm going to pull it off. So it's a nice way to create texture, designs. It's a really fun, interesting surface area that you could take care of just using impressions. So this bin, this green one that's found in the ceramics cabinet along with all these other tools, has a lot of great stuff. So like some things that you might have that could make some really interesting textures or patterns could be just a seashell. So that could be just one seashell, that could be multiples, you could overlap them, you could lay them in a sequence and have them wrap around a piece. Lots of different options. Another one is just this little tube here. This is holding an X-Acto knife. And I'm just going to pop some circles in there. Nice, very nice little circles. You can overlap them so they intertwine. So that could create a cool design wrapping around a piece. Really or just play with any object. You can have lots of fun. Rings, jewelry, anything you just find laying around. Okay, these are just some homemade bisqueware stamps that I use just bamboo tools, needle tools to create some designs just into this little handheld piece. There's numbers on it, and there's numbers also on the little example and the tile that's inside the box. There's a small one and a big one, but just by overlapping and repeating them, you get some really interesting textures. Maybe you want to create a pattern, so I'm going to alternate this old pen tube as well as one of the bisqueware stamps that I have. And that could make an interesting kind of V shape and circle alternating. Okay, another one that I have is just this wooden stick. So alternating these, I could create patterns, fish scales, kind of a basket weave effect, a roof, whatever you want to do. But that's just one tool with two sides, and have fun.
Hello my friends, how are you today? I am here in my Christmas socks and my Christmas pants, and I'm ready to do some clay with you today. Alright, so for Christmas this year, instead of doing a Christmas concert, the whole school is going to be making some art. And everybody is going to be making a nativity scene. Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus, etc. Every class is doing something a little bit different, and we are going to be using clay. Your clay is going to come in this tub right here, and everybody gets their own. We're going to be using almost all of this clay. The other things you need for this project are some hand lotion, which we'll put on first because it's quite sticky, the clay. You are going to need some white paper, some white photocopy paper, not lined paper. This is not thick enough, so please don't use this. I'm just using some leftover sheets I have from music, and I'm going to be using the white side, not the colored side, not the printed side. Now, something else you're going to need, and we'll talk about that a lot today, is you're going to need something to make some designs on the clay. There's going to be Mary and Joseph, and they're going to have a cloak around them, and they need some kind of design on that cloak. And so I just got some things around the house. I'm going to use a fork. I thought this necklace thing had kind of a nice little design on it. I might use that. I found a shell. A shell is going to make some really nice imprints in my clay. I found this rolly thing for your feet, but I thought that that might look kind of nice in the clay. And then I found this hair clip I thought might do something interesting. We'll do some experimenting with it. So these are the things that you're going to need when you do your project. Also, you're going to need something to roll out your clay. You can just use your water bottle, but if you want to bring a rolling pin, I just used the saran wrap from my cupboard, and I'm using that just to roll out the clay. The paper will be on top of it, so it's not going to stick, so you don't have to worry about anything sticking to your water bottle and getting it dirty. Okay, let's get started. First, I'm going to put some lotion on my hands. So nothing sticks. Then I'm going to put some paper down for myself. And I'm going to open up my clay. I'm going to dump out my clay, or pull it out maybe. And you're going to start feeling it, massaging it, getting it warmed up a little bit, feeling what it feels like. Now, I've already been working my clay for a little bit and playing with it and doing some experiments with it, some of which did not turn out. So hopefully what I do with you is going to turn out today. And so what you're going to end up doing when your clay is all ready to go, when you've worked with it for a bit and it's soft enough, and you can tell that it's soft enough when you can sort of massage a little ball in your hands like this, and it doesn't stick to you and it doesn't crack, or it's not too hard to work. I'm going to work that back onto here. So what you're going to do to make sure you have enough material for each of your people, we need Mary, Joseph, and the baby, is that I'm going to make this into a long log or a snake, and it's got to be the same thickness all the way along. If it's too thick on one end, squeeze it out a bit more. Make sure it's the same thickness. And I'm going to try to measure, let me turn it this way maybe for you. You see that whole thing? I'm going to try to measure this into thirds so that each item has about the same amount of material. Because baby Jesus is a little bit smaller, we might end up having a little bit of a smaller spot for him. So
I could take my ruler and I could count out 3 even chunks. If you have a ruler, it's 30 centimeters, so each one would be 10 centimeters if this is the size of your ruler. But for me, I'm just going to measure it out. If I put my fingers here and here, does that look sort of about even, that this chunk might be the same as that chunk is the same as that? Maybe? Something like that? Okay. Take a look at that. What do you think? That's about right, I would say. So that one's going to be for maybe Joseph. This one might be for Mary, and this one for baby Jesus. I'm going to put them back in my bucket and close it to make sure it doesn't dry out while I'm doing my first piece. And out of this piece, I'm going to be needing a body, a head, and a cloak. Now the cloak is the thing that's going to be the prettiest part. The body and the head you're not going to see because most of it will be covered with the cloak. And so we'll spend the most time on the cloak. So if I make another log, roll it out a little bit. Whoop. If I make another log, I want half for the cloak, and this part is going to be the body and the head. I'm going to pinch off about this much for the head. The picture that you saw earlier, the head is quite large. You can decide whether you want a head quite that large or not. So I've got a head going here and a body. So here is what I'm going to use for Joseph's body. And I want to make sure he stands up really well, so I'm not going to make him very tall. I want to make him a little more thick. I'm going to push it down into my hand a little bit to squish the bottom to make maybe a bit of a bigger base. And then maybe he'll stand up really well. Who knows? Let's see. Okay, not so bad. All right. And I need a place for the head to go, so I'm going to make a flat top. I think I want him a little bit taller than that, maybe. Maybe not. You can decide, these are supposed to be individual, right? All right, so for his head, I'm going to just roll and roll and roll. Okay, now here's an important part. When you attach 2 pieces of clay together, if you have a smooth side and something smooth and you think they're going to attach together, they probably are going to be pretty fragile in that spot. Here's what you have to do. You take your fork, and they call it scoring the clay. It's almost like you are making some rough patches in order for the rough patch and a rough patch to attach to each other. It's almost like Velcro. If Velcro is smooth, it wouldn't attach to each other. One side has to be like this, one side is like this, and then they're really well attached. So you do that to the bottom of the head, so wherever the neck is. This part here already has a few cracks in it, so I'm going to make lines going down and make lines going across. This is called cross hatching. Down and across, so it's just sort of rough. Do you see that? Just sort of rough, almost like the top of a peanut butter cookie. And you do the same thing here. Cross hatch, so it's a little rough on both of those areas. And then you attach the 2 rough areas to each other. I'm gonna push it down a little bit. Push down, and then you can use your fingers to sort of attach the neck area to the head area. If we were going to see this part, you would spend a lot of time with this. You might wet your finger a little bit and just make sure that you don't see the seam, but all of this is going to be covered with that cloak. so it's not so important. Okay, so there we go. I've got Joseph with a great big head, and he's standing up really quite sturdy. His body and his head are finished. Now we're getting to the important part. This is going to be his cloak. His cloak needs to be in a circle shape, so we are going to make this into one big ball. So squeeze, squeeze, roll it around in your hands. If it's got any cracks and stuff in it, it's not ready yet. You want to make sure that it's a nice smooth ball because we're going to be rolling it out. And we don't want any of those cracks or anything that looks not really tidy. We don't want that on our cloak. So our ball has to be as perfect as we can possibly get it before we start rolling it out. Okay, does that look pretty okay to you? Not too bad, hey? Okay. All right, now this is where the paper is really important. I rolled this out on my countertop. It completely stuck to my whole countertop. I couldn't get it off. I tried rolling it onto a piece of saran wrap that I'd placed on the floor. It completely stuck to the saran wrap. And so I grabbed some paper, and the paper, the reason that it sticks is that there's extra moisture in here, and the paper will absorb some of the moisture and let you peel it off really nicely. So I'm going to place this in the middle of my nice white paper. I'm going to place some nice white paper over top. Remember, the white side is going to go down. I don't want any of these marks on my clay. Put that on top, and I'm going to use my hand to squish down evenly so that it just spreads out like a pancake. Use my hand as much as I can. You can feel how fat and how skinny it is under there. And once it gets relatively fat, although it's still quite thick, I can start using whatever I'm using for my rolling pin. See why it doesn't matter if you're using your water bottle? Because you're not going to get it dirty. It's just going to roll on the paper. And I turn my rolling pin different directions, and it's about this round right now, so I kind of start in the middle and I push to the outside edge. Push to the outside edge, and then I start in the middle and push to this outside edge. Here's the middle, push up this edge and down to this edge. I want it to be nice and round, and I want it to be an even thickness all the way through. So this part you're going to spend a lot of time on. You don't want to rush through this part. Okay, I want to take a look at what it looks like now. So I'm going to pull that paper off. You might even be able to see that some of the moisture has come onto the paper here, hey? So I'm going to peel this off. It peels off quite nicely. Uh-oh. But there's so much moisture, the paper is so wet now that it actually started to rip and left a little piece on top of my clay. So I'm not going to use this paper again because it's already absorbed as much moisture as it can. I'll put it off to the side. It'll dry and we can recycle it later. I might use a brand new paper then. Okay, so here's what it looks like right now. So if I were to use this right now, you can see that I've got, maybe you can't see, I've got cracks in the edge here, and I did some leaning right there, and I've got sort of a little wrinkle, and I don't really want that to show, so I'm going to go back over and continue. Now this is also not going to maybe be big enough either. So New piece of paper, white side down. Gonna roll it out a little more. Ah, look at that. What do you think? Not bad, eh? Okay, so it's a circle. Looks good. I'm a little worried it's going to stick to the paper at the bottom. Yep, it totally did. I should have gotten rid of that a little earlier, perhaps. But this side's going to be on the inside against Joseph's skin, so I'm not going to see it. So I'm not too worried about that one. Okay, so now it's time for us to decorate the cloak. Now Mary's going to have a cloak, and baby Jesus is going to have a blanket, and Joseph's going to have a cloak, and you might want them all to look a little bit different. So here's what I did. I found some different things that I thought might make good impressions. And an impression is sort of like a fossil. I want it to leave a fossil in my clay. So this is kind of cool, I thought. So maybe I'm going to make a border around this cloak of this. So I'm going to put it on the edge and press it in, wiggle it a bit. Oh, I might have pushed it in a little too far because it's stuck. Okay, so I was lucky I got it up, so this time I'm not going to press quite so hard. I want to use a couple of different things. I really quite like this fossil that I have, and so I'm going to use that. So this is kind of how it can look. Now, I have to be honest, I'm not loving it. And so if I were to be doing this in class with you folks, for me I might go, you know what, I think I'm going to try something different. The nice thing about clay is you just grab this into a ball and make your ball again and squish it out. This doesn't have to be your last final draft, your last final product. Clay is lovely that way. You can wreck it and start it over again and it's perfectly fine. But we're going to imagine for the moment that this is the most beautiful thing that I could ever possibly make. It's actually not bad. I quite like these ones on the edge. Look at how nice that is, hey? These little designs, isn't that kind of beautiful? If I were to imagine that I'm making this, that this is my final product, and I go, oh my God, that's the best I can possibly do, and I just love it. Now's the time to put the cloak on Joseph. Ready? Okay, I'm gonna zoom out again. And wish me luck, because this is the part that didn't work well for me last night when I was trying this, and I ended up having to destroy it. Okay, here's my lovely Joseph. I'm going to peel the paper off of my cloak, and you have to decide where Joseph's head is. Now, I kind of like the idea of Joseph looking down at Jesus a little bit. You know, he'll be sitting down here. So I'm going to lean his head just a little bit forward. Can you see that? Just a little bit forward as if he's looking down at my hand. And then I'll put the cloak around his back, where I imagine his back to be. So, I'm going to be gentle. I'm going to try this out. Let me just move my paper. Perhaps you can see better if I do it this way. Let's see, what if I did it this way? So I'm putting it over his head like a hood. And then I bring it around the front. Interesting. Okay. So my cloak is quite large, a whole lot larger than my Joseph. So I'm going to end up with some on the table if that's okay with you. Now it's splitting a little bit, so I'm just going to use my fingers to pinch it back together. Again, clay is wonderful this way. You can mold it. It's going to take probably 2 full days to dry, so you have lots of time to fix and to mend it this afternoon while you're making it, or tomorrow afternoon whenever you're watching this. So you can decide how you want your cloak to sit. Now, I think I would like my Joseph to be a little bit taller. So, again, clay is wonderful that way. I'm going to squeeze it out so Joseph sits a little bit higher, a little bit taller, but still has a nice sturdy base. See how he's a little bit taller now? Now I'm going to take my cloak. Which way do I want to do it? Maybe this way. And there won't be so much sitting on the ground. I wasn't sure that I was loving that whole piece on the ground. And I'm going to pinch the front together so it stays there. And there we go. And so there we've got Joseph. Now, the picture that you saw, of course, had a much smaller cloak, and Joseph's head stuck out a fair bit. You can certainly do that as well. You decide how you want it to look. You are making your own art piece. An art piece is all about doing what you like, and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So, does that make sense? Joseph, body, head, and cloak. Now at this point you're going to want to sit him on a spot to dry. Now you might have some wooden boards that we might borrow from Mrs. Van to put them on. And in fact, if you're going to let it dry on the wooden board, which I probably would recommend, you might want to put Joseph on, or your creature on the board before you put the cloak on it, because once the cloak is on, then you can just let it go. You don't have to pick it up again. Because now that I'm picking it up and handling it, I've got a few little spots that are having some issues, right? Okay. So there's my Joseph. Might also look like Mary, to be honest. So there's one of my characters. Because this is sort of a modern art piece, it's not going to have a face. The picture of Mary has a little flower in her hair. I don't know if you saw that, but if you want, you can create a little flower by making little balls and putting them together, putting them in Mary's hair if you want this to be Mary. Okay, so there's Joseph or Mary, whichever one you like. Let me hold it up nice and tall. There it is from the front. If you don't want a hood, you can pull it down so that you can see more of the head. And here's the bottom. And this is where the art part comes in, right? The part that you made, your design. This is the part that sort of is the most beautiful. Whatever you decide to make as a design on the cloak. And there's the first piece finished, ready to dry. Okay, it's time to make baby Jesus. Here's the 1/3 that we kept aside for baby Jesus, and we may not need to use all of it, to be honest. I'm going to maybe take half of it. And this is going to be baby Jesus's little blanket. And we're going to make it exactly like we made a cloak. So, first of all, I'm going to make sure this is in an actual circle, because we are going to make a burrito out of little baby Jesus. Okay. So, first of all, we need to make a design. Now, For this one, I think I want it to look sort of like a baby blanket. So I'm going to use this roller to just roll over the whole thing. Like that. Okay, so this is going to be the outside of the blanket, the part that shows. Here's what it looks like close up. Kind of nice. Now here's the part that's different. We are going to pull this, oh dear, pull this off of our paper. And I'm going to make a burrito. So I'm going to fold into a third, fold it over like that, and fold it under like this. Ooh. I've got cracking going on, but that's not a problem. You can always fix little cracks by using your finger. You can dip your finger in some water. Not too much though, because boy oh boy, this will get so mushy really fast. I can even just use my dry finger to push any little cracks that I see. Any little cracks that I see. Now this top part that's folded over right here, this is the important spot, because that's where Jesus' little head's gonna go. This is like his bed and his blanket all in one. Now of course, baby Jesus is gonna have a little head. And there is your baby Jesus. Cute, huh? Now, if I want that to stay in there, what did I say about getting two pieces of clay to touch each other or to connect to each other? Make it a little bit rough on the inside there. Dig, dig, dig. Rough, rough, rough. On the back of the head. Rough, rough, rough. Dig, dig, dig. Poke, poke, poke. And then those two pieces go together and you sort of dig them into each other just like Velcro. Now, of course, I've squished poor Jesus' little head, so I got to make it nice again. And then I can cover up the blanket, put it down over top of him so he's nice and cozy. And there's little baby Jesus. Now, if any of my little etchings have come out, I'm going to go over it again. Oh, that looks better. I want it to look like he has a nice little blanket. What do you think? There he is. Hey, Jesus. Okay. All right, so I'm in the process of making Joseph. Here's my Joseph, nice and tall, a little taller than Mary. And I didn't worry about what he looked like so much because, of course, inside here, Joseph isn't going to be seen a whole lot, right? His whole body is not going to get seen a lot. So, and I found this little fan at home, this little handheld fan, and it made some really nice little impressions there. Look at that. I just pressed it into the top and wiggled it a bit, and that's what I got. Not too bad, eh? Okay, let's see what he looks like with his cloak on. Now, Joseph's cloak, I don't want it to lean on the ground, so I made his cloak a little bit smaller. And there he is. I kind of like it not leaning on the ground quite so much. What do you think? Which one do you think is better? Okay, so if I pick up my friend Joseph, put him over here beside Mary, And the baby. There we go. So Mary is sort of leaning over the baby, looking down at him. How's my little baby doing? And there's Joseph standing tall. But doesn't that look nice at the back? So do a really good job on your cloaks. If I were to do it over again, I might spend a little more time on this one. And I probably wouldn't make it quite so large, just because the ends are cracking a bit here. So there's my little family. Good luck, everybody. You can do it. You got this.